Oh, we're gonna shorten the fuse on the fun bomb, friends. And what do we got here? Yeah, I know. I dropped that on the floor the other day, so the fun bomb really does have a short fuse. So, anyways, welcome to the dexplanation of my 2024 burn. So we're gonna get right into it. Fury is no more, friends. And yeah, Eidolon of the Revel. Is it a victim to removal? Sure. But it's removal that could otherwise be spent somewhere else. So I love having it in the deck. Definitely sets a timer. That 2 damage, just bink, 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 bink. Even though it's doing it to us, it's fine because they're always, if we're playing this metagame burn decks correctly, our opponent should always have less life than us. So this will always hurt our opponent worse. So of course, we run these 4 in the main deck. There we go. Let's keep things neat and tidy, right? We'll go like that. We're going to try to do this. By the end of this, everything's going to be everywhere. We all know it, right? We have Monastery Swift Spear and Goblin Guide, of course. Getting that wonderful prowess trigger. We can take a peek at what our opponent's rocking in their deck. So we have the Goblin Guides for that. So there is the basic creature base. And for a long time, why Burn suffered, as all decks did, under the wrath of Fury and the scam decks, this was the creature base. It was the Bozo the Clown. Bozo is to clowns as this is to creature base. So yeah, just 8 of those, but now we have Eidolon again, so very exciting stuff. Now, let's get into the burn, shall we? We have Searing Blaze here as one of our instants. This is wonderful in the main deck always, especially if we're running against creature-heavy decks. If we're running against something that's not creature-heavy, we would, of course, this would be the first to sideboard. We have 4 of these in here to deal that wonderful damage. And let's talk about why we have 4 of these in here. Now, like something like Skullcrack, it lacks versatility in the sense where it's useless against non-life gain, whereas Searing Blaze is always useful in a creature-based deck, which we're seeing a lot of. So Searing Blaze, we're going to have land being entering. This is a 20 land deck, so land is always going to be entering. Searing Blaze is just an excellent choice removal spell to run in this deck. Even if for some reason the land did not enter, and it being an instant, if we fetch on our opponent's turn, being able to hit them on their turn with something like this is amazing. So what a wonderful thing to fetch on their turn, be able to play a Searing Blaze and the creature they just played, knock it out and hit them for 3. That's a wonderful thing for us, right? So just like Monastery Swift Spear, this card is definitely a sponge for removal because in a deck like this, it can definitely get out of hand quickly. What is that? All right. Well, and Goblin Guide, of course, too, is like a wonderful turn 2. You can be dealing 4 damage. So a turn 1 Monastery. Turn 2 Goblin Guides. That's a lot of damage. Or even like this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage turn 2. So that's what we're looking for, is that kind of synergy, which the deck really just thrives on that kind of synergy. So we really love, I love the way that the Mona the Swift and Gobble Guide here work together in that way. I definitely find that to be very satisfactory for fun. For the fun bomb having a short fuse. There we go. I like that side better. My inner sleeves on this deck are getting a little raggy. Sometimes I don't know about inner sleeves, but I let a lot of people play these decks, so it's good to have them. I've never regretted double sleeving, I should say, like Look at that one. I was always happy I did in the instances. Better to than not to. In any case, let's dive into these instants a little more, shall we? So lightning bolt, that's an obvious choice. But when to lightning bolt? There's a question. People wonder that from burn players a lot. How to use a lightning bolt, when to use a lightning bolt. Well, that depends on what you're playing against. And you got to do math in your head. So if you're playing against like a prowess deck or something, say you have on the other side of the table. Let's see here. I'll just pull one out myself here because I got one right here. Let's say we have on the other side of the table something like a questing druid, okay? So questing druid can turn into a problem for us because we're not very creature heavy. So a questing druid on the battlefield is going to get counters. And if our opponent's playing like a prowess deck, questing druid is going to be something we would want to stymie up because we don't want something getting big. Just like only in the rare instances, it's so important to remember, only in rare instances should we not hit our opponent's face. But being a good burn player is to know when to hit face and when to send it to another place. We'll do it that so it rhymes, so we remember, right? When to hit face or when to send it to another place. So what I would think, like with Boros Charm, this almost always you're going to want to go and hit face. The 4 damage to target player is wonderful for 2 mana being an instant. The permanents you gain indestructible. Okay. The reason this is in the deck is it deals 4 damage for 2 mana. It's not in here to protect our permanents. But that being said, in a certain instance, if something is going on, and for some reason late in the game you have a big Monastery Swift Spear. Okay, you've cast a couple burn spells. You have a 3/3 Monastery Swift Spear. If you give that double strike, do the math. Always do the math to see what your value hit is going to be. And even 1 mana makes a difference because when you're using things like Eidolon, that 2 damage makes a difference. So just 1 mana makes a difference. Just like, say you're on a turn, right? And you have in hand, you have Boros Charm, 2 lightning bolts, and you have 3 mana. So, look at that. We have 3 mana. Would it be more advantageous for us to cast this with our 3 mana and deal 7 damage? Okay. Do 6 damage like that. And play something like Monastery Swift Spear. So let's say we have our 3 mana. We play Monastery Swift Spear. We play Lightning Bolt. And we play Lightning Bolt. So we've dealt 6 damage there. And our Swift Spear is a +3/+4. Or +3/4. Sorry. Or a 3/4. Duh. All right. So anyways, when we swing in then with our Swift Spear, so that's 3, 6, 9. All right. So that would be more damage getting through in that instance. Okay. More than 7. All right. Even though it seems wisdom here, it isn't. So if we can get through with Monastery Swift Spear like that, play Monastery Swift Spear and 2 lightning bolts, that's always better. Math. And that's why, like, burn makes you, something about the deck even being called burn, I think makes people want to play quickly. It makes people want to be like, I'm fast, like bang, bang, bang. And I'm a fast player. But with burn, if you just play to burn people's faces, you're going to lose and you're going to burn yourself out. Which you certainly don't want to do. Which, as we're getting on here, all right. Going through those instants still, of course, yeah, 4 lightning bolts, 4 Boros Charm. Now, lightning helix, let's talk about that. So, we're running Eidolons in here. Think if we're really putting it to our opponent, and for some reason we decide we have 2 Eidolons on the board. So we're going to be casting spells. We're going to be dealing 2 damage to that player. So it's going to deal damage to us when we cast spells. So that is why in this deck I run 4 Lightning Helix. And I used to run 2 in Burn. And then 4 Skullcrack, I think is what I had in here. But I run 4 Lightning Helix. These never are sideboarded. It deals 3 damage to any target indefinitely for 2 mana, and you gain 3 life. So there's no stipulations on this. Deals 3 damage to target player or creature, and you gain 3 life. You can even do that damage to a planeswalker. You will gain 3 life. So this must be in here, because then these things are not so scary to us. I mean, how many times, really, think about it, do you come across like a life gain? In Modern, you don't see it too much. That's why, like, Skullcrack, I say, like, let's hit that gas pedal a little harder and go with these Eidolons, and then to keep our gas going so we're not killing ourselves, essentially, we are having those Lightning Helix. And then Lava Spike is just a lazy lightning bolt. It's a lightning bolt that likes to just hit our opponent's face at sorcery speed. So 3 Lava Spikes, Rift Bolt, a really lazy lightning bolt, right? Deals 3 damage to target creature or player with a suspend cost of 1. So this can be problematic to us, so we must be mindful of it. Because if we suspend this, okay, Eidolon, when this is cast on our turn, Eidolon is going to deal damage to us. Similarly, Roiling Vortex is going to deal a lot of damage if you're not mindful with this. I've seen it happen. So, Skewer the Critics. This is a wonderful card in the deck. That Spectacle cost, if a player's dealt damage this turn, you can pay the Spectacle cost to play this sorcery. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Who cares if it's a sorcery? Spectacle's great. It's another 3 damage card for us, and we can almost always pay that Spectacle cost. I think I can count on one hand how many times I've not paid the Spectacle cost. So this is basically a lightning bolt at sorcery speed with the way that burn decks are built. It's a terrible card in many decks, but this is not that deck. All right, as we're going on here, staying organized. Aren't you guys proud of me? I am proud of me. All right. Critics, Rift Bolt, sure, Lava Spike. Onward, forward we go. And we're going to talk about our mana base. Or Searing Blaze. Did we mention Searing Blaze? I think we did. It's got the Landfall. Landfall is going to happen. We're running 20 lands in here. So Searing Blaze deals 1 damage to target creature, target player, and 1 damage to target creature that player controls. So I'm sorry about that. It deals 1 damage to target player and 1 damage to target creature that player controls. So if we had a land enter the battlefield under our control this turn, Searing Blaze deals 3 damage to that player and 3 damage to that creature instead. So again, this is a 2 mana hitter that has versatility there to hit a creature if we're playing against. So this will be sideboarded for something else if we're not playing against creature heavy builds. Even like a middle-sized creature base, if we feel like something has maybe 12 creatures, we may sideboard one of these. So only in the instance where you really need to be knocking creatures off, we're going to have a target for that landfall trigger. But even so, the landfall, we can deal the damage. So there, that is good. It's an instant. And most importantly, so cool, I think I mentioned this, right? Have the best case scenario of fetching a land in your opponent's turn and then dealing the Searing Blaze to a creature that has entered the battlefield. Love it. So satisfying. That's right, I did mention Searing Blaze. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about the mana base here. So what happens in a burn deck that's so low to the ground? And what's funny is I have other decks. People think burn is like really low to the ground. To me, like, it doesn't have any 0 mana costs. It doesn't have any like cantrips that pay for themselves, things like that. So I think something like, the prowess, is it Gruul, mono red prowess, Jeskai prowess. I think all of those decks are way more low to the ground. So keep that in mind when you play Burn. Don't feel like you're going to be Johnny the fastest man on the block, because prowess decks can really hurt Burn. They really can, because they are very fast, because you have prowess triggers from free mana. So they're playing free spells like stuff like 8 whack and that. Definitely like a fringe deck, but having played 8 whack and then playing my Dino Storm, I can tell you those decks are tough against Burn, because Burn, in its essence, in some cases, you could say Burn is like a stacks control deck. And I get a lot of flack for saying that. But by the end of this video, if you stick with me, I think you'll agree with me on that Burn is kind of a stacks control deck. So we have Fury Islet. We have one of these. It's a red mana if we pay a life. One and tap and sacrifice it. Draw a card. We have Sunbaked Canyon. Full play set. So this late game, post turn 3, if we're running low at cards in hand, this is going to save us. This is going to totally bring us out of the mire. Just one card. Unless, of course, we sacrifice a Sunbaked Canyon and draw into a Sunbaked Canyon, right? That would be a little silly. But in any case, that extra card draw. We have Inspiring Vantage here. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So generally, you don't have the trouble of these coming in where you have to have them come in tapped. It's a shame if you do, but it's worth it enough having them and having the colors you need early for no cost to you. Get the colors you need early, sir, at no cost to you. It's such a wonderful thing. So, yeah, I think it's worth it, and so do a lot of others. 1, 2, 3 Arid Mesas. Always change out my fetch lands. This is a deck where you have to know when to fetch on your turn and when to fetch on your opponent's turn. So it's not always, sometimes you must. Like if you get turn 1, okay, and you have 2 lands in hand, and let's say you have 2 fetch lands, my friend, if you have something you can pay 1 mana to cast, like hit their face with something, even if it's to play Monastery Swiftspear, you go ahead and you fetch on your turn, and I will say it, if the other, whatever you have in your hand, you're going to need white. So if you're going to fetch a land, take 3 damage turn 1. You guys think I'm crazy for saying that, but this is not a deck to hesitate with. You got to know when to do what you're going to do. Now, if you have something like, let's say on turn 1, okay, we have a mountain and a fetch land in our hand. So on turn 1, what I would do with mountain and fetch land. So turn 1, I would play mountain. I'd play Monastery Swiftspear. I'd send in the Swiftspear. Okay. Then what I would do, I would draw for turn. And depending on what I drew, okay, I may find it advantageous to use that fetch land on this turn and fetch up what I need. But what I would be hoping for in this instance, okay, would be to draw into something like Sacred Foundry, okay? Because Sacred Foundry is what we would fetch if we didn't have a white card. So fetching on our opponent's turn is wonderful because we can get around that paying 2 life, and then our turn comes around, it's all ready to rock and roll. That's a perfect world. If we can get that and things happen for us in that order, that's great. But a lot of times with this deck, you're going to have to bite the bullet. And some people, say don't do that, but I think it's a good way. I've been playing a burn a long time, and I think biting the bullet on if you feel like you need to fetch and get it on your turn, do it. Because there's a good reason you're feeling that. But just look at your hand. So let's talk about that sideboard real quick. Here we go here. So we have Path to Exile, all right? So this, just running 2 of these, the Path to Exile is very niche. It's in there for things that we cannot bolt. It's in there for things that may have indestructible for some reason. Any type of niche thing. I mean, I'm sure everybody can think of a million things. I'm not going to bog us down. Similarly to Sanctifier Envec, not quite as relevant as it once was, but still wonderful in this deck, especially against black and red, because you have a 2/2 beater in essence that you can send over, and it basically is not going to be, you almost have to, if it's a black or a red deck, this thing, you almost have to force a sacrifice on it. So, big problem there. You have the Graveyard Hatred, but I always say it, I like a body on the board in this. So, this I like better, but a better card, which I'll just say I'll run Chalice of the Void over this. And I like Path to Exile. This will go from my sideboard when I use my 2 Chalice of the Voids when I'm playing outside of the other decks, because I don't have a bunch of Chalice of the Voids to go around. I will take these 2 out over this almost all the time. Just because this is 2 white mana, and the horror show of Scam is not so scary anymore. We have Smash to Smithereens. This is specifically for problematic artifacts that are going to target the mana cost of our things that we want to cast, particularly 1 mana. This is something to smash that to smithereens, as it were. Any problematic artifact. But again, this deals 3 damage to our artifact's controller. So that's important. Things like Wear and Tear. I ran 2 Wear and Tears in here as well. But it just wasn't versatile in the way I needed it to be, because I wasn't coming up against enchantments I wanted to hit too hard anyways. And it wasn't doing damage that we needed to get through. So that's a problem with that, when we're not dealing that damage. That 3 damage is important. I've seen people splash green in here actually just to run Destructive Revelry, right? Just to get that damage that Destructive Revelry offers, which is, I think it's pretty much like destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and Destructive Revelry deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So, Searing Blood deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature dies this turn, it deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So, against creature-heavy decks, these 3 will join Searing Blaze to keep the deck of our opponent and keep their board state under control, and to keep that damage going through. Because a lightning bolt should go to the face most times. If we're going to take out an opponent's creature, what a payoff to get damage through. That's what we really want, is to get our damage through. So we need to constantly be hitting our opponent. And that's why I say it's not about like hitting lightning bolts to face all the time. Do the math in your head. So turn 1. Well, you know what? We'll get to that in a second. I digress. So 2 Skullcrack. In the instance where you're going against some horrible life gain thing where it's really, because life gain is stealing cards from us. A life gain is like a mill deck to us, man. They are just turning our spells. They're countering our burn spells. That's what life gain does. Counters our burn spells. So if we bring this from the sideboard into the deck, this is one you want to hold on to and wait until you need it, until you feel like it's going to happen. But it's a trade-off, because it's 1 in a red, so you're going to be like, is this the turn? But it's quite obvious. If they have a big life gainer up, that's a good indicator that you should keep some mana to hit them with the Skullcrack. Roiling Vortex. Remember I said this is a stacks control deck at its heart, and everybody probably laughed. Roiling Vortex makes it so. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. Now this is why Skullcrack found its way out of this deck. Right there. 1 red, your opponents can't gain life this turn. That is so much better than Skullcrack, am I right? But in some instances, we may not want to run Roiling Vortex. Or maybe we'll want to run 2 Roiling Vortex and 2 Skullcracks. Because if we get an overabundance of these in my hand, I'm not going to be happy. because we're not going to want to play a ton of Skullcrack or Roiling Vortexes. So if we're going to bring something out of the deck with Roiling Vortex, we need to really think about it. So there's an obvious answer and then a not so obvious answer, right, my friends? Isn't that this is the case always with things, right? What does George Costanza say? Why must there always be a problem? Why must there always be a problem? Such is in Magic. So the problem here, and I'm sure everybody's saying it, raise your hand if you know the problem. What doesn't work good with that? Here we go. Here's a few of them right there. There's one somewhere. I thought I had those in order, but here's 3 of them. There's one in the deck somewhere. Rift Bolt deals 3 damage to any target. That's the spend cost. Rather than cast this card from your hand, you pay 1 red. So this will be cast on your upkeep for nothing. Okay? So right there, whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. So Rift Bolt is a pretty smart choice to pull from the deck as a sideboard option. But should you just take 4 Rift Bolts out and put in 4 Roiling Vortexes? Not necessarily. If you really want to pull a Vortex, but you don't want to go all Roiling Vortex, I say you put in 3 and then do like a sensible sideboarding of that. But let's move into a little bit of what's our time at? 26? Man, I love Burn so much I could just talk about it. I could just talk about it and to talk about it. But I can't do that, can I? So, let's see here. Get myself in order, sir. Searing Blaze. Here, there's that Rift Bolt we were looking for. Just missing some sideboard pieces. I was doing so good, too. There's Ido of the Revelo. Swifto, Gabo. Did I see that right? What we got here? Yep. All right. So there's those. I swear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And I don't know. Anyways, it's somewhere, right? Somewhere. That's strange. But in any case, let's talk a little bit about mulligans, okay? How to mulligan, when to mulligan, what kind of hand. So how do I choose when to mulligan? I'll show you some here. We'll set up a dummy hand here. We got a Goblin Guide. We'll take a Rift Bolt. We'll say a Lava Spike and a Helix. Oops. Goop-da-doop-da-doo. All right. 6 and... Oh, there's our sideboard, the Smash to Smithereens. Okay, perfect. Get in there where you belong. All right. And we'll say a Searing Blaze. So there's our opening hand. That's exciting, isn't it? All right. So let's take a look here. How much damage can we get with this hand? So this is one thing I like to do. So we have 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 14, right? If we get our landfall. So we have 2 land sources, right? So we know our first 2 turns are going to be okay. But let's look at this real quick. What do we do here? What to do? I'll show you what I would do. And there's no right or wrong here. There's better or worse. So judging from my odds, I am going to play my mountain, okay, and keep my Scalding Tarn back to see what I draw, because there are 20 lands in this deck. Lots of lands. Maybe I'll get one of our faster lands and a land that won't have to hurt us when we need it. So I want to deal this direct damage. So we have a Lava Spike. Should we play Lava Spike or should we play Goblin Guide? Here's the answer. Goblin Guide. So tap 1, we'd play Goblin Guide and swing in for 2. And we get to look at the top of our opponent's deck. So they reveal that. We see it's a land. We know what they're playing. We get a good idea and the wheels start turning. Maybe we're thinking about what to sideboard, right? So we've attacked with our Goblin Guide. On our next turn, oh, look at that. We drew a mountain. But you know what? I feel like we're going to need some versatility. So we're going to play Scalding Tarn. All right? And we have a mountain in hand. So, methinks what we're going to do, let us suspend Rift Bolt. We'll swing in with the Goblin Guide for 2 damage. Pass the turn. All right. And on their turn, we'll sacrifice Scalding Tarn, and we'll search up Sacred Foundry. We could let it enter tapped, so it doesn't do any damage, but think of this. Let's say we did that, okay? Let's say we didn't play Rift Bolt. Let's say we just swung in with Goblin and kept this open. So, Scalding Tarn, on their turn, they place something that's problematic. This is an instance where do Scalding Tarn, pay 1 life, let that come in untapped. Then we play Searing Blaze to deal 3 damage to some threat that they put on the board. Some important thing, maybe a mana generating dork, something. So know when to do Searing Blaze. You don't always have to do this. I mean, we've done 2 damage to ourselves, 3 really, with our fetch land to have this come in untapped. So this is a special instance. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, let's see here. Did you see, though, one thing I like to do, if I don't have 9 or more damage in hand in 2 lands, really, I will almost always mulligan if I don't have 2 lands. But then you need that damage. Like if I have a hand that has like Monastery Swiftspear, Eidolon, in 3 lands, and a Searing Blaze, that's a mulligan hand. So a hand like, say you got a hand like this. Goblin Guide, a mountain, Scalding Tarn, mountain. Okay. Lightning Helix. And some random, we'll say another creature. That probably, yeah, that would seal the deal. Even if it was a Goblin Guide. Like a hand like this, right? What do we have here? We have 3. You know, we'll be being optimistic. There's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there is 10 damage there. But look what we have here. I don't feel good about this at all. Just to even to play it out, like I guess the smart way to play this, what I would do is I would play out Goblin Guide, hit for 2, pass the turn, draw a card, play Scalding Tarn. I'd tap this, and depending on whether they played a creature or not, if they didn't have a blocker, I'd probably hold back on Lava Spike, play out the other Goblin Guide, and then swing in for 4, pass the turn. On their turn, I'd fetch up Sacred Foundry, let it come in untapped, pass the turn back to me, draw for turn. And depending on their board state, let's see here. You know, actually, that wouldn't be half bad. Really, 1, 2, say we did Searing Blaze, deal the damage to creature and player. And 1 left over. Yeah, and then do Lava Spike to deal 3 more damage. And then swing in. It's not the worst, but I was pulling those off the top. That would have been a total disaster if I didn't, you know, pluck those lands. So knowing when to mulligan is important. And that's just an idea. It takes time to play. And then knowing what you're playing against, to mulligan against, is really important too. But people that say like burn is a beginner's deck, burn is easy, it really isn't. And if you approach burn like, oh, I'm just gonna hit face, you know, like there's jokes about burn where like they say like how to play burn, then you know lightning bolt, pshh, bam, boom. That's not how you play burn. Like you have to really. It's a very intuitive deck, and at its heart of hearts, I'd say it's a mono red control, but like stacks light, like it controls stacks. Um, because think of like Roiling Vortex. This is so powerful in this. Not even, I mean, think about it. Like anything that tries to cheat onto the board is totally gonna punish. I mean, so punishing that 5 damage. And when things like are played on the board, when something combos off, it's usually turn 2 or turn 3. So, on our opponent's turn 3, when they're trying to cheat a bunch of rhinos, they're trying to do some kind of shenanigans. This right here is just going to punish the heck out of them. So that is wonderful. It has a way to control the board state against creature-based decks. You are just controlling. And if you play it right, if you play it properly, there's not much weaknesses to it. One big weakness, don't want to mix those. One big weakness, I would say, would be decks that are stealing your burn spells. So Ragavan is like one of those where Ragavan's a kill on sight. And if you have to waste things to kill Ragavan, you know, that's why Searing Blaze is so good, because even if a land didn't enter and you have 2 mana, you don't have to waste a dang lightning bolt on the monkey. You can do Searing Blaze. It'll deal 3 damage to Ragavan, 3 damage to the opponent if a land entered. If not, it'll take care of Ragavan and deal the damage to our opponent too. So that is good. I think that kind of covers it. I'll probably do some more talking about burn just because I like it. I love burn so much I could almost make a burn section all to itself.